Libs want criminal justice deform. Portland is under siege. Mask mandate mania. And why are there $1 Cuomo chips? Welcome, everybody, to the Buck Sexton Show. It is Friday. We have so much to talk about before you go about the rest of your weekend and put another one down in the books for this era of pandemic in which we're all just muddling through, it seems. But we're doing it together. We're having some fun, at least here in the Freedom Hut as things go along. These days, any place called the Freedom Hut sounds like it's going to be considered an enemy of the state by the lockdown libs. They've increasingly lost their minds. I wanted to start with where we are on criminal justice issues because I do think that's where we're starting to see there's a reason that the Democrat media is focusing entirely on COVID, or I should say overwhelmingly on COVID, at the expense of what about the movement? Remember, and now you might say, Buck, COVID's so much more important than criminal justice reform. Well, yeah, that's true, but it wasn't true a few weeks ago, according to the media. Why is that? And I would argue it's because the American people are starting to see what the movement, what BLM is really all about. As I've been telling you, BLM has made everything worse for everyone in the last 2.5 months or so. Nothing has improved. Nothing is better. And increasingly, we have to look to who should be held responsible for this. And I would argue it's the Democrat Party. I would argue that Joe Biden and all the elected Democrats and the mainstream media should be held accountable for this. The only way that happens is if Biden loses and the Democrats lose, particularly lose control of the House. That would be great this fall. So we need to look at what's actually going on right now. And I yesterday played for you that audio, which now after this show, I will say, I saw it up on Fox News and it got a lot of play, which is great. See, unlike some people, I actually want the most important messages for the benefit of the country to get out there. And I want my fellow conservatives and the biggest websites and the biggest names out there to be talking about the issues that we do here. I just, like to note that it's something that we've talked about, and now it has gone all over the place. You had that Officer Jackson out in Portland. We were talking more about Portland today, who just said, look, some of these white protesters who show up at these protests, these riots, whatever you want to call them, say explicitly racist things to black cops. And there are white female protesters in particular who try to separate out black cops from being able to talk to black protesters as if that's their role or they're staying in their lane with that. It's completely and utterly ridiculous. Well, why is this happening? Who's allowing this to happen? I've spent a lot of time on the show talking to you about the rioters, what they're up to, whether it's BLM looting or Antifa, attacking statues, whatever it may be. Those are the shock troops. Who are the generals of the movement? Who are the people that are really giving ideological cover to this and suggesting that somehow this benefits us as cities get less safe and as things get worse in many places across the country? Who? Well, you may have heard of a professor at Brown University named Glenn Lowry. And he is in the unique position these days of being a tenured professor at an Ivy League university who is a black man who says things that you are currently, as somebody who is in all of those different categories, currently not allowed to say. If you had, for example, I've brought this up before. If you were talking to the public and saying that you're doing a lot for public health, you may recall that there was an episode of The Office. No, actually, I'll stay away from that one. If you were talking a lot about public health and you said that you were raising millions and millions of dollars, billions of dollars for research into the hantavirus, as I've told you before, hantavirus can be lethal, and it's a very bad thing if you get it. It's also very, very rare. About, CDC says, close to maybe anywhere from half a dozen to a dozen cases a year. And if you were having marches in the streets for public health, claiming that you wanted to deal with the hantavirus, and then the moment somebody brought up, oh, I don't know, cancer or heart disease or something that kills a whole lot of people, yeah, you're allowed to be concerned about the hantavirus, but why aren't you concerned about this other thing that is so much bigger of an issue? You're allowed to have multiple concerns. See, this is the game that the libs play. This is the pretense that they all go through of, oh, well, start your own movement. If you care about black people getting shot in Chicago and New York so much, conservatives, start your own movement. And it's like, well, hold on a second. The movement is called Black Lives Matter, but as we know, it's very specific black lives under very specific and politically useful circumstances. Why do we have to assume why do we have to treat that like it's a moral proposition? They're focusing the public, national attention, taking tremendous amounts of license to shut down streets, police resources, overtime funding for it, the looting that happens, the rioting that happens, the destruction of public property, all of these things in the name of black lives, but it's really a very, very small, very, very, very small subset of black lives. And we're supposed to just accept that, not supposed to challenge it. If you do, they'll tell you that, you either don't understand them or they'll just say you're racist. That's usually we've returned to this now. As a society, we go through periods where being called a racist is effectively license for the person making the accusation to say whatever he or she wants. Remember, you'll have a lot of white liberals love to throw around the term racist too. I mean, just go over to HuffPost, Vox.com, MSNBC. All these smarmy beta male white liberals in these places love to throw around the term racism. And they think it's an argument ender, and they think that, they're part of the new digital civil rights movement or whatever. They're clowns. They're morons. Glenn Lowry, though, going back to this professor at Brown University, had a conversation on a show where, and I just want to play it for you. He nails this issue about where is the focus? Why do we have to accept that this is the focus of BLM and that's defensible and moral compared to what the focus could and should be? And who's really benefiting from this? Cui bono? Who benefits from this situation? Let's hear from Professor Lowry. Play clip 1.
The guilty white liberal who needs a narrative about race that allows them to assuage whatever psychological processes they have, give rise to a market for the mutterings of the likes of Ta-Nehisi Coates. And my concern is about the actual well-being of black people, not about the froth on the top of the waves of American elite culture and how they're reconciling their own psychodramas about racial guilt, but about the actual lives of people who are getting gunned down by thugs a half mile from where they live, trying to pump gas into their car at 1 o'clock in the morning. Somebody decides they want their BMW or they, et cetera, and they put a pistol up beside them and blow their brains out. And the fact that we have a public discourse where the extirpation of black life in the thousands per year by exactly that means can't even be mentioned. And the handful of black kids who are gunned down by bad police officers becomes the defining feature of our racial discourse. Ta-Nehisi Coates is a product of this diseased racial, political American culture. I'm less concerned about rebutting him than I am about calling out the depths of intellectual vacuousness and moral superficiality that's reflected in this fact.
The intellectual vacuousness and moral superficiality that is the basis of the focus of the BLM movement. Professor Lowry just nailed it. If I could right now, I'd give him a standing O. I inject this into my veins. Pick your phrase, my friends. This is exactly the point. This movement is largely driven by white liberal guilt. Those are the people that you see going on TV at night at these major networks who are being paid millions of dollars, who don't live in neighborhoods where crime is a major concern. Even if they did, They would make sure that they had the private security and the other mechanisms necessary to defend themselves and their families. They don't go to the public schools where there are more problems, when there's greater crime in the neighborhood. Their kids go to the private schools. These white liberals are frauds. They are frauds. And they're cowards. And they're hurting the very communities that they pretend to help. And here you have Glenn Lowry, a black professor, a brilliant fellow, who is saying, what the heck is going on here? We're going to talk about making Black lives matter. We're going to actually use the phrase, not the movement, the phrase, what's the most important thing you can do? Protect as many Black lives as possible, make them as fulfilled, as safe, as happy, and secure as possible. And that is a conversation that all Americans are willing to have. That is a conversation that deserves focus, and it deserves honesty. How do we make things better? How do we improve? How can we support the formation and sustenance and long-term longevity of the nuclear family in the Black community, in Black and brown communities, in all communities? There is too much dissolution of family across the country. And everything you can see, if there is such a thing as social science, it tells you that the family unit and its solidity, it is the foundation of our society. And if you're not having a conversation about that and pushing policies, darn it, to support it, and having a culture that sustains it, you're unserious. And in fact, it's worse. The BLM movement is worse than unserious. It's destructive. It is making things worse for everyone in this country, notably for people who live in predominantly Black and brown communities where violence is going up. We're learning this lesson that we've seen so many times play out before in this country. Democrats don't care. Now they'll focus on COVID. They're just waiting for someone to catch on video another instance of a cop wrestling someone to the ground. It looks too violent, or, a cop who has to pull his gun and use it, God forbid, but it happens. And if there's a murky circumstance, they're going to leap on that and try to get the rage machinery going all over again without having improved anything, with only having made things worse. They never learn the lesson, because it's never about really making things better. It's about exploiting the anger of people and exploiting the concerns, and in some cases, in some communities, the hopelessness that is felt for nothing but opportunistic political gain. That's it. So that white liberals at fancy parties in particular can feel like they're the good people. They're doing what's necessary. They care so much. So they can watch, talk shows on HBO or Comedy Central or whatever, where they have these multimillionaire anchors who are making all these jokes about how racist the Republicans are and how racist conservatism is, when we are the movement that says you don't judge people by their skin color. You treat everybody as an equal human being worthy of dignity, respect, and love. And you try to actually help people, not pander to groups, not lie, not misrepresent the real problems or what's really happening, to talk about police violence against black men and not to talk about violence in the broader community and how many lives are lost to that is shameful. And as Professor Lowry says, it is intellectually bankrupt and morally vacuous, or morally vacuous and intellectually bankrupt, either way. That's just the truth. Let's see how many people will figure that out in the weeks ahead. I can't believe we're being evicted from our home that we didn't even sell. That's what Deborah said when she learned that she was the victim of home title fraud, which is a crime that can actually cost you your home. Title fraud is not covered by insurance or identity theft services. The only trusted folks to protect you are over at Home Title Lock. Your home's legal title's online where cyber thieves find it and forge your signature stating you sold your home to them. In Deborah's case, she didn't know she was a victim until the eviction notice arrived. Home Title Lock puts a virtual barrier around your home's title. If tampering's detected, they instantly mobilize to stop it. So go to HomeTitleLock.com and register your address to see if you're a victim and don't know it. Use code BUCK for 30 free days of protection. That's code BUCK at HomeTitleLock.com. Again, that's HomeTitleLock.com. You know who's not going to figure it out? You know who's not going to change course and make things better? The idiot mayor of New York City, Bill de Blasio. Here's his, this was just this week. Here's what this utter buffoon is saying while this city is on a 35% murder spike year to year. You're having shootings that it's starting to sound like the worst parts of Chicago happening in New York on a regular basis. It's crazy what's happening. Everybody knows it. Everybody sees it. And here's what de Blasio takes away from the situation. Play clip 3.
We now have fewer people in our jails than any time since World War II. And we are safer for it and better for it.
So he opened up the prisons. Bail reform, all these things, all these, loosenings of the different criminal justice issues that are meant to keep people safe and meant to punish the guilty, punish lawbreakers. He's wiped this all away. You can now urinate in the street in New York, no problem. Oh, yeah, that's real. That used to be something you get arrested for. You can do all kinds of stuff. I see things happening on New York City streets that I haven't seen since the 90s. Which is when things were really bad here. I mean, to give you a sense, I keep repeating it, you got a little over 300 murders a year in New York. Until this year, it's going to be a lot higher than that. Might get up to, who knows, 350, 400. You have 300. It used to be 2,200. 2,200 murders a year in one city. That's like... that's starting to feel like Medellin in the bad old days when Colombia was going through a narco insurgency, right? I mean, 2,200 murders a year. It can happen here. I grew up in it. I remember it. I lived it. And de Blasio saying that we're safer than we've ever been because of these reforms is just, this is in direct contradiction to reality. Anyone can observe. Anyone can see what's going on. He simply does not care. He's got an agenda. He is pushing forward. Only got 18 months left in office, so he figures, hey, you know what we're going to do here? Let's just make sure the social justice warriors are happy with what I've done. That there are going to be people who get shot, killed, get raped, murdered, that there are going to be more funerals, that businesses are going to leave. I mean, this city felt like it was on nothing but an upward trajectory economically. It's changing now. Oh, it's changing rapidly. He doesn't even care. It's about justice, you see. Fewer people in prison. Were the people in prison innocent? Why is he celebrating that? Were people going to prison for not doing anything bad? Well, now they've opened up the prisons, they've done bail reform, and the city's a lot more dangerous. And old ladies get punched in the head and fall down and hit their skulls on fire hydrants because lunatics who have been arrested over 100 times, this actually happened, are free to roam the streets, do what they want to do. And the cops are told, you better do the bare minimum. You better not get too rough with any of these thugs because de Blasio is going to make an example of you. You see, they're learning all the wrong lessons because they're not learning anything. They don't care. They view the sacrifice of your safety, the sacrifice of this country's gains against violence nationally. If that has to turn around the other way, so be it. It's what social justice demands. Just how bad is it? Remember, New York has, for now, almost no COVID problem. So we're really focused on the criminal justice issue, and the rise in crime is really what we're talking about. You have a New York State Councilman, Anil Bipan Jr., who put out a travel advisory for the month of July in New York City. Here's what it says. Due to the rising rate of violence and major crimes, it's recommended that area residents exercise increased caution while visiting New York City. Violent crimes such as homicide, shootings, felony assault, grand larceny, and robberies is widespread. Armed criminals have been known to target and attack individuals, both premeditated and at random. Due to the disbandment of the anti-crime NYPD plainclothes unit, coupled with criminal justice reforms, officers, judges may have a limited ability to provide adequate services and protections for crime victims. With a 21% increase and a 53% increase, 21% increase in homicides and a 53% increase in shooting victims, it's advised that residents exercise extreme caution while traveling in the hotspot areas indicated. You know what the hotspot areas indicated are? 4 of the 5 boroughs: the Bronx, Manhattan, Brooklyn, Queens. Staten Island, you are still considered safe. Now, at this point, I think you might say, Buck, I know you're in New York, although you do a show for the whole country, and in fact, people listen all over the world. What's up, Team Buck International? But I'm saying this because New York is the laboratory. Remember, we used to talk about, I used to say on this show almost 10 years ago that colleges are the laboratories of liberal lunacy, and that what is being done on college campuses will find its way into boardrooms, find its way to the top of political parties, all throughout the culture, major media organizations. And of course, that is now obvious. That was true. Well, when it comes to this undermining of cops and this anti-cop mentality, it's playing out in the largest city in the country, but it's in other cities all across the country too. And it's going to come to areas that are not known as places that you'd have to be considered about a rising crime rate, right? It's going to filter out throughout across America. It's already happening. And Democrats, because their whole party is invested in this narrative, because they see it as a benefit. With more people more miserable and with violence on the rise, they can blame Trump. And in the meantime, they get to say, well, that's really bad, but look at all the stuff that we're doing to show how not racist we are as a society, all these criminal justice reforms. That's what the Democrats are saying. That's their move. That's their position here. Mayor Bottoms down in Atlanta, we can move around to different cities. Chicago, obviously, they just, they can't get under control. Mayor Lightfoot called Kayleigh McEnany on Twitter called her a Karen and told her to watch her mouth. That's the United States White House press secretary. Call her a Karen, tell her to watch her mouth. Oh, just imagine if some of the dynamics were a little different. You had a Democrat press secretary, female, and was told something like that by a major politician from the other party. It's also why, I know some of you disagree with me on this. I don't like this. I know people use it in different contexts. I don't like this term Karen. It's a denigrating term for white women. I don't know what we want to start throwing this around. That's the only time it's ever used. I just read the tweet against Kayleigh McEnany and tell me if you think that that's a term that conservatives should be popularizing. And I know a lot of you have reached out to me because I said this on Twitter and you disagree with me, but I think I'm right on this one. I don't like using this term Karen all the time because, I won't get into that. And I've used it in the past, so I'm not saying I'm not guilty, but I've thought more about it, and I think that it's not something that we should popularize. Call them, busybody libs, because that's what you're really referring to. Now, Mayor Bottoms has had a huge surge in shootings in her city, in Atlanta. National Guard has been called in. So, you've got Minneapolis, crime wave, Portland, we'll get to that, crime wave, New York, crime wave, Atlanta, Chicago. I mean, these are all, that's just off the top of my head. I haven't even been able to crunch the data on, I don't know what's going on in, St. Louis, crime wave, right? I haven't been able to crunch the data on a bunch of other places yet, but I don't think it's good. The Ferguson effect, as it's called, in full effect. Cops not able to do their jobs as effectively, taking less risk to themselves, being less aggressive in their policing, just means more innocent, good people get hurt. Particularly more of the, 99.999% of minorities who live in these neighborhoods, who don't commit crimes, who just want to live their lives, and are the victims of crimes. But here we are, nonetheless. there's a spike in shootings, Mayor Bottoms. Remember, de Blasio says, we opened up the prisons. It's great. We're safer than ever. No, you moron. We're less safe. Everyone knows that. So why are you saying we're more safe than ever? Mayor Bottoms, there's more shootings. Why are there more shootings? Oh, you guessed it. Because of lawful gun owners. Play clip 4.
But in Georgia, an open carry state, people are allowed to walk down the streets with assault weapons, and we don't have probable cause to stop them. And you don't get to pick and choose which demographic you get to stop and question as to why they're walking in our streets with open weapons. It is an issue in Atlanta. It's an issue in other cities across this nation, and it is one that we take very seriously. But this notion that somehow the governor is helping us with law and order is false. He has military tanks in front of state buildings. This is a playbook. This is a play out of the Nixon playbook. Distract, talk about law and order when the reality is that people are dying of COVID-19 and this president and this governor have failed us.
Notice the move away. It was all about police and criminal. It was all about Black Lives Matter a few weeks ago. Now it's all about COVID. Interesting. I thought that Black Lives Matter was so urgent that we had to risk more COVID cases. That is what the Democrats told us. Risk more COVID cases and more death from COVID because of the urgency of BLM. That was the narrative. That's what was accepted by them. That's what was put forward by them. The media, the Democrat Party, liberals. That was it. Now it's, Republicans are trying to distract. No, Republicans are probably trying to stop angry mobs from looting and burning more government buildings, which seems fair considering that that's what has been happening in recent weeks. And the Democrat Party has been cheering it on. Go for it. Show how angry you are. Ruin the country. Blaming open carry. I would defy Mayor Bottoms to show me one instance. She's talking about people carrying long guns, probably AR-15s, but who knows? I would defy Mayor Bottoms to find me one person who has been open carrying in Atlanta a semi-automatic rifle who had it lawfully, so not including a convicted felon or somebody who's not allowed to have a gun, that was engaged in an act of criminal violence with that weapon. I'd want her to show me just one time. I would bet money that she couldn't come up with it. Not one time. No. Where's the gun violence coming from? Thugs with handguns. Thugs meaning people who are criminals who therefore should not and cannot legally have weapons in the first place. It's not open carry advocates that are lawfully possessing those weapons that are leading the shootings. But this is just, we all know what she's saying. Oh, yeah, it's like those evil, patriot militia members or something. I mean, what is she even talking about? It's just utter nonsense. There's been no change in the gun rules. So why would there be a big surge? There's a surge in violence because her city, well, really a county nearby, has told the public that a cop doing his job and defending himself could end up with the state saying, we're going to murder you to the cop. We are going to try to kill you, to end your life to a law enforcement officer. That has what you'd consider a chilling effect on police, which then leads to the bad guys who have guns illegally, who don't care about, going through the National Instant Background Check System or, they're just buying a gun on the street. And then they go and they do a drive-by and they shoot people and they'll shoot, a 1-year-old in a park. They don't care. That's where the crime is coming from. But she's a fraud and, quite honestly, obviously incompetent. So there's Atlanta. How are things going in, I don't know, Portland? Portland is a city right now that is under siege. It's a city where it's very clear that there is no real sense of law and order. And it's a place that increasingly relies or needs federal assistance to get back up on its feet and have some security. You have the acting chief of the Department of Homeland Security, Chad Wolf, whom we had on the show recently, going to Portland and now deploying federal law enforcement, DHS, cops, deploying them to assist because the city of Portland under Ted Wheeler, who's a left-wing idiot, and the governor, who's another left-wing idiot, are incapable of stopping Antifa from doing horrible stuff. I mean, last night, the Portland Police Department, I couldn't believe it as I saw it, tweeted out from, this is the official Portland Police Department account, tweeted out the following, quote, "We have heard chants stating the crowd around Southeast Precinct wants to enter the property and burn down the precinct. You are subject to arrest and use of force, including crowd control munitions, if you enter the property." Thanks for the helpful reminder, Portland PD. A mob has gathered and is shouting and threatening to burn down a police station, and the best the police can come up with at the time is to try to remind via Twitter the mob that it is in fact illegal to burn down a police station. This is America, July of 2020. This is what we're seeing. This is what's going on. And Democrats can pretend that this isn't indicative of broader issues. They can pretend that this isn't the rapid deterioration of law and order. They are out of their minds. They are just wrong. And they're lying. They're lying to you. Portland has had government buildings attacked. Recently, a federal courthouse was attacked and lit on fire. That's arson against a federal building. You know, the government's authority is largely driven by perception. And the perception has to be, I mean, if you really want to talk about real law and order, perception has to be that if you attack the federal government, you will be punished and punished severely. If the belief is that you can get away with attacking the federal government, then people can do it all over the place. It all starts to deteriorate. It all goes away. Where are the arrests? And where is the sense of urgency? Again, the Democrats don't care about any of this. It doesn't matter to them. It serves their political purposes right now. And what are the things that we will hear about from the left as all this is going on? It's just the most transparently absurd and reckless undermining of cops, pretending that all police are racist. Oh, here's an example. The headline, with federal officers making arrests of Antifa militants. This is a domestic terrorist organization. Okay, that's what Antifa is. In Portland, Antifa getting arrested by these guys. The headline of the Washington Post was, quote, "It was like being preyed upon. Portland protesters say federal officers in unmarked vans are detaining them." Oh, my gosh. Federal officers in unmarked. They are federal officers. It says police, and they have DHS patches on them. And they're in uniform. Well, what are they supposed? Do they have to wear the special windbreakers? Does that make them cops? Or what do they want them to do? But the way the Washington Post frames it is be afraid of this federal overreach, the federal government. The same thing you have with Mayor Bottoms in Atlanta. Oh, why would they park a vehicle like this outside of a building? Well, because they're trying to prevent people from burning the building down. It's not a distraction. This is what is happening. This left-wing movement of BLM and the statue topplers and Antifa and all this other stuff, it's out of control. It's overwhelmingly pushed on now by the most ignorant, lunatic liberals you could possibly find. And the media needs this sort of froth on top of the base, this rage, so that they can feel as though they have the upper hand against Trump going into a re-election. Their base is mobilized and the country is under siege. That's the perception we're supposed to have, and they're making it a reality.
Vote like your life depends on it.
On.
Because it does. Pick any issue you care about. I guarantee it is on the line in this election, and Joe Biden has a vision for how to make change.
Your life depends on it. Your life depends on voting for a Democrat. Oh, Elizabeth Warren's really making it very clear where she comes down on this issue. You know who? My dad always told me that just shoot straight with the folks. When you're a senator and a former tenured Harvard law professor, you just gotta be so Main Street. Shoot straight with the folks. And you know what she wants you to know? That it's real simple. Vote Democrat or you're gonna die. Elizabeth Warren at least doesn't dance around the issue. Happy to tell people the truth here in her mind, which is, if you don't vote for if you vote for Republicans, you're basically voting for human beings to lose their lives. There you go. Because Biden has a plan. He has a plan for everything. Biden has whatever piece of paper and whatever juice sippy cup they put in front of him. The guy doesn't know anything about anything anymore. He never really did. He's always just been a vessel for whatever was the most politically advantageous position in the Democrat Party at any given time. He's not particularly bright. He's actually kind of dumb. It's known that Biden's just not very smart. He's only been successful at one thing, getting elected in the state of Delaware and just sort of being around. He just gets the longevity in politics award. That's it. But if you vote for Biden, your life is going to get so much better. It's all going to be great. Just listen to Warren.